City of Stevens Point Board of Park Commissioners meeting, recorded May 3rd, 2023.
All right, well, good evening, everybody. It is now 6:30, and it is my pleasure to call the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners in session for tonight. Director Kerner, would you mind reading the roll, please?
Absolutely. Freckman?
Here.
Disher? Here. Gledusky?
Here.
Alder Kiemer?
Here.
McDonald?
Here.
O'Connor?
Here.
Shabilsky?
Here.
Alder Short?
Here.
Sorensen?
Here.
Carrie Wynn is excused. Alder Zarazua?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Next agenda item is an approval of, oh, that's right, thank you. Yes, we talked about this and I completely forgot it. So we are excited to welcome a new member, Matt Disher, welcome. So Matt is joining us as a new commissioner, and perhaps maybe we'll go around and do introductions because we kind of rolled through the roll call quickly. So Sean, you want to start, please?
Sean Shabilsky. Mike Gledusky. David Shore.
Makira Zarazua.
Wayne Sorensen.
John O'Connor.
Ginger Kiemer.
Bob Freckman.
Welcome, Matt. I'm Liz McDonald. Nice to meet you.
So we're excited to have you join us, and especially representing the Softball Association and the work you do at Xenia Park. So welcome.
And Wayne, Fred, tell you that everything that we need some volunteer for, you get now for the first year.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, that's the, yeah, so I believe that Alder Kiemer and Carrie Wynn are now off the hook. So congratulations. So again, agenda item number 2 is an approval of the April 5, 2023 meeting minutes. Give folks a chance to look at it.
I move
Liz?
approval.
Got a motion from McDonald. Is there a second?
Here.
Gledusky, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries and they're approved. Thank you. Agenda item number 3 to award project 23.025 cash playground resurfacing to the Adventure Turf. Dan.
So this project, if you recall, we've gotten about a 15-year lifespan out of the poured-in-place surfacing underneath Cash's Playground. It's the only playground we have in the city park system that is poured-in-place surfacing. Todd and his crew is who actually takes care of that for us, and they've been patching that surfacing for many years. We put this into the capital budget. It was approved. What is good news is that we were able to get 4 bids on this, which we didn't know if we would originally. The number in the actual agenda contains a 15% contingency. The really only unknown we don't know is when we take the surfacing off. Much like turf, there's a compacted rock underneath it because the water runs through it essentially. It should be fine. We anticipate it to be fine, but the only way we'd end up tapping into that contingency is should something with the rock need to be re-leveled or regraded or compacted. So we are recommending the bid be awarded to Venture Turf and the amount in the agenda. The only additional cost here, so you know, this is for the reinstallation and the recompaction of the ground. We do have a small contract with Green Thumb that we locally let because it was less than $25,000 for the removal of the rubber that's there. So they'll be doing that. It was around $20,000 for them to do that. And our intention to do this towards the tail end of summer or maybe into the fall when children return to school, just because there's a huge rush of children that are down there using that right now and really all the way through the middle of summer. So we do recommend award. They're qualified, and again, we were happy to see 4 bids, all very close.
What's the time frame as far as how long this will take them?
So it sounds like it'll be a few days to take it out, and then it'll take them a couple weeks to put it back in. So I would say we'll probably advertise to the community 4 to 6 weeks and hope it's much less is what our hope is.
And how do they remove this?
They cut the stuff that's there in 3-foot sections, and they actually roll it out just like field turf. And it comes out in rolls, and then they have to, there's 2 options. They're either going to try to find a place that can be repurposed. If they can't do that, they'll end up paying to get rid of it. So they've got a bid that they'd have to pay to remove that material or pay to work it out with Portage County Recycling. But if they can't do that, then if somebody else would want it, they would let them have it if it's something that can be reused.
Color codes and all that will be the same, or how's
It's
that?
not going to be the same schematic of coloring. That's quite a bit more cost. So it's going to end up being a blue-black mixture is what it's going to be, a standard color.
Thank you.
Great
So we
question.
had 2 questions. We had Alder Kiemer and then Sean.
Did the bid from Adventure Turf include a donation, or did they just bid under budget? Or
No donation. They just
Okay.
were under budget. Yep.
that's great.
And I was just curious, with it being replaced at the end of the summer as opposed to the beginning, how's the current service? Is it workable, patchable for the summer? Is it going to be okay?
We did patch it last year, so yeah, it's being used right now. So if we do have, say, something small happen, we might have to put a small patch in again, which our crew does in-house. So we'll basically try to get to the last minute or as far as we can the way it is. If we have to do a small patch, we will. But it is safe. It passes all the testing right now.
When Cash Playground was built, Was there any contingency fund set aside for future maintenance or anything?
Yeah, great question. So there is about $50,000 at the Community Foundation Fund.
Good.
And so how the city budgeted this project was $215,000 through city funds, and up to that $50,000 being moved over for whatever we need to complete the project. So this is well within budget the way this sits. We'll basically be transferring any dollars that we can't cover with the $215 through the city's budget system.
Great, thank you.
Other questions?
And the rest of it, I should mention, will go towards future replacement of the playground when that day comes.
But do I remember correct that original funding included, 50% state, that one of those.
We had a grant from the DNR.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So, Dan, so do you have target dates for a timeline? The only reason I ask, even in the fall on a nice weekend, that park is packed. So how are we accounting for that? Are we just shutting it down completely? And then, so when would we start? When do you think we'd be done?
I think where we're looking right now is it'd probably be late August in a best case scenario, otherwise first part of September, and we will end up putting a complete snow fence around the entire area and closing it because of what you're saying. There's no way to stop anyone from entering the area without doing that. And once they start actually putting the rubber surfacing in, there's some cure times, like concrete, so we want to make sure that no one gets into that material either. So I would say, we're in a perfect world, if it could be mid-August into September, that's what we're looking at.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion. John?
Make a motion to accept the award for Adventure Turf for $225,975.
All right, we've got a second for Matt. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Agenda item number 4, land permission request from the UW-Stevens Point Student Chapter of the Wildlife Society Waterfowl Project and the Student Chapter of Ducks Unlimited. And Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so this request came to me from a student, I think going back about 6 weeks ago or so, Jacob Tepsa, who's unfortunately not able to be here tonight, but he and one of his professors, Ben Settinger, who's here, basically had a Zoom meeting with me and said that an initiative that the university has been doing in the Mead Wildlife area to our west, they were looking at locations in the city and around the city that potentially they could do it here. And they ultimately just asked me what would work. They had some different ideas. And when we first met on this, when we were looking at, if you look at the photo of what one of the nest boxes looks like, we were trying to determine where it might blend in best into the landscape, where we could kind of test the idea out before we would go into, other areas of the park system. And we thought that northeast corridor along the green circle, and really on some of the airport and water wellhead protection area was what would make sense. And we also talked about that if there was anything that would happen to unforeseen challenges, it's not something that have to be permanent, right? You can easily move something, or we can really work through that. The things that came to mind when we were discussing it, and I give the students and the professor great credit that they were really open to anything, is I said, well, sometimes I've been confused. Let's say one's damaged, who do I contact? So we actually talked about having them labeled with who's taking care of them. So I think that'll free up if someone has questions where they don't have to wonder, they can just contact the information on them. And we also talked about some being closer to view along the trail versus some being off the trail. So based on our discussions, they would maintain them. There'd be students each year that'd be part of it. The professors in the university would really be tasked with that. We kind of kept this fairly simple. Basically, the map is showing where they'd like to put them. They would take care of them. We would allow them to go there. We've checked with Director Lemke, who said it's okay. So based on our review, we think it's a really great thing. Great for the wildlife, great for the students, great to see them in our community, and adventuring off the campus in town. So staff does recommend approval. And the technical questions, you could recognize Ben, and he said he'd be happy to come to the podium and answer them if anyone has them.
Sure. If there are questions, Dr. Settinger, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and grab a spot at the podium, and we'll if there are questions, we will throw them at you. Questions? Go ahead, Leslie.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I was impressed with the detail in this plan and wanted to thank you and the students in the university for working with the city on such a wonderful thing to make use of our natural resources and educate the students, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for having us and entertaining this. I think it's a really neat opportunity. It's a great opportunity for wildlife, and then, as you said, for training the next generation of biologists too.
Dr. Settinger, how long will this project last? So, in terms of, I see there's a research project and that takes several years, but how long do you expect those boxes to be maintained on a regular basis, and how long is a project from a research standpoint, start and end?
Yeah, so they've been monitoring, the Wildlife Society's been monitoring boxes up the Mead Wildlife Area since the 1990s. So there's some potential, to perhaps do this into perpetuity, as long as there's somebody at the university in my role that's willing to supervise the student chapter. And so of Ducks Unlimited and TWS. So, I mean, it could be 20 or 30 years, I guess, if there's interest. I think it's a great opportunity, again, for conservation and for training in addition to the research.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you just mention, you had mentioned that actually a variety of wildlife might use them too. Could you just touch on that? I think I found that really interesting when we were talking.
Yeah, I've actually been out checking boxes the last few days. I just rushed back from Portage. Got my field clothes on here. Anyway, so some of the species that we'll see in there, obviously we're targeting wood ducks. Wood ducks are cavity nesting species. But we get a lot of hooded mergansers using these boxes too. There'll be screech owls in there from time to time. Kestrels will use them. I've even seen little flycatcher songbirds using nest boxes like this. So we're not just targeting wood ducks. That's what we hope to get. But there'll be lots of other stuff using them too.
Awesome. Good question. Alder Keemer.
Thank you. Just based on that photograph, how high are the boxes, and are they placed in varying heights, or are they a standard placement? Or
We try to keep them pretty uniform and accessible. We don't want people getting up real high on ladders and things.
Yeah.
And so typically the bottom of the box might be about 6 feet high, something 5-6 feet. Yep.
There you go. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you. I guess if there aren't any additional questions for Dr. Senninger, I guess we'll entertain a motion to accept the proposal.
Well, yeah, I'll move to approve the proposal.
Walewski, second by McDonald. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with the project. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5, the introduction and pre-approval consideration for the Plover Crossing Interpretive Trail Sign Project. Dan, I'll turn it over to you, and then I want to introduce our guests.
Absolutely. So this is really a continuation of our large project, as everyone knows, that we're working on with the Plover River Crossing Trail. So we've been fortunate, both Steve Menzel and Tori Jennings have been really working right alongside the city, instrumental in all of the fundraising and some of the conceptual planning, and working through the different, not only from when we started with the route to the grant, to now this next phase of what are some of the accessory items, I'm going to call it, that will increase the experience when you're actually on the trail. So what's before you here is kind of the preliminary descriptives of what would be some of the interpretive trail signage. And both Tori and Steve had come to me and talked to me about the opportunity of some grant funding and exploring this route. And really at the time, what staff had said is, since it hadn't come before a body, in the concept of it made good sense, and it seemed to be, the biggest question is always funding and maintenance. And they approached that grant process to try to handle most of that. So what's here tonight, and both Tori and Steve are here to answer questions, but they're asking for some of that pre-approval so they can go down that road of acquiring the information, organizing it, working with some of the experts they have listed on that form, so that when they come back later and we build the trail, which we are planning for in 2025, and forward, that it's not something that we forgot to get approval on or that everyone wasn't aware of. So that's my high level on it. There's much more technical knowledge, I'm sure, that the two of them have if there's questions, but so far, based on everything I've reviewed and that staff we've talked through, this is a very similar sign layout in principle we've talked about of what you might see along the Riverfront Trail and some of the other area parks, where it's kind of that steel tubing angled signage. So we're familiar with it. It doesn't look like something that would be anything different than what we're normally doing. And I think this is what we talked about, where it technically could be printed on both sides, so that if it faded, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you could flip the sign over. Is that the same conversation we talked about?
It doesn't fade.
Okay.
So I guess, yes, Tori, Steve, if you guys wouldn't mind going to the podium so we can capture the comments for the TV broadcast. I guess we'll open it to the board for questions.
Okay. Is it okay if I make a few comments?
Go ahead.
And I'll pass around. This is how iZone Printing does the actual signs. The Schmeeckley Reserve already uses iZone, but this is a resin, 10-year warranty, doesn't fade, graffiti resistant, all of that. So like the director said, I'm here with Steve Menzel, but I also want to acknowledge that Mary Kneebone is here, and she's on our steering committee for the Plover River Crossing, so thanks for being here. So the Plover River Crossing Trail is an opportunity for creating outdoor experiences for leisure, but also for education. And early in the year, I wrote a Community Foundation grant to partially fund this interpretive trail sign project. And as an anthropologist, I see the need to tell a deeper history about the area that goes beyond Anglo-European settlement. And so when and I also wanted to integrate people into the environment. So when we see invasive species, for example, we should be asking the question, what do these plant communities tell us about human behavior? So that integration is there. We received the grant, and then we were faced with the challenge of creating signage that conveys some really complex social and environmental ideas. And our advisors include Karen Ann Hoffman, who is Oneida, archaeologist Ray Reeser, that probably most of you know. And our first meeting led to the idea of using art to help say what is difficult to say in text, particularly a limited amount of text, and especially from the cross-cultural perspective. And Karen Ann suggested that I meet Ho-Chunk artist Christopher Sweet. And you might be familiar with Christopher's work because on Friday there will be a dedication to the artwork that he did at UWSP. And then he was also chosen as the artist in the Paint the County project. He did the barn project art, so that's Christopher Sweet. After I visited his studio in Baraboo, it was really clear to me that his work, but not just his work, his perspective as a Native artist could tell a story about this place, and one that comes from the indigenous voice. Christopher is very interested in this project. We've had him and his wife, Chrissy, down to the area. He has experience with wayfinding signage, the Garmin project, and I think this project will complement and expand what is already done on the Green Circle Trail. we're asking you pre-approval for this sign project, but in addition, pre-approval for the naming of the trail that will emerge through Christopher's art, and it will come from our advisory team, which now represents Oneida, Ho-Chunk, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi tribal members. And you might also know that Karen Ann's late husband, Mike Hoffman, was one of the last remaining Menominee speakers in the region. It's important to note that from what we know, there is not a single indigenous place name for a trail, park, road, or place in Portage County. This project will be the first. However, in Portage County, we have names like Custer and Amherst, generals who led wars against Native peoples. And in fact, Amherst is associated with inoculating blankets with disease. So that's what he's associated, and Custer's pretty well known. So anyway, one of the reasons we're asking for pre-approval is this is a very involved project, a lot of work, and a lot of money is going to go into this. So it's not something that we can say, oh, Christopher, create these 5 original pieces of art, and we'll take it to the board and see if they like it. I can't do that. I'm hoping that you like the idea and you're excited about it, but do you have any questions? And Steve can also answer any.
I guess just a point of clarification in terms of the purpose for the board tonight. The only agenda item, Tori, that we will be approving is the pre-approval for the signage. It's my understanding that there was some discussion over a year ago about the trail, but that's a separate agenda item. So just as a point of clarification, there are more questions. I think this is a wonderful idea. But for tonight's purposes, for this board's action, we will only be taking up action on the sign approval.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for clarifying that.
So, please.
Tori, you mentioned that there's 5 pieces of art. Is that the number of signs that you anticipate having? Or?
So there'll be, or no, is it? Yeah, so there'll be 3. There'll be one on what we call the island, which is a forest ecosystem. There'll be one in the wetland, which is the boardwalk, and there'll be one in the meadow. And the meadow is also another project that we're working on in terms of prairie restoration on private land that abuts to the trail. And then one that will be on top that will be double-sided, because one side will be a dedication sign to all the donors and the people that have made this project possible. And then the other side will be more artwork, but it basically sets up the context for what happens afterwards, because we're thinking of this signage as a story. Karen Ann Hoffman kind of refers to it as the preamble or the first chapter. So that sign is serving multiple purposes, but it will have his artwork on both sides, but both sides will have text to set this up.
Is there any thought to putting like some kind of a roof or protective surface above the signs to protect them? You said they last like 10 years.
They're guaranteed 10 years. That's what Garmin did. I think these are conversations we could have with Dan and Rattler when we get that far. We order the, call them the stands or the frames. They also come from iZone. So they have the schemes. They can do any size. They can do any shape. And then we order the posts, the steel posts through them as well, which can be vertical, they can be slanted. The sign can be to the side of the post. There's all different kinds of options.
Thank you.
Tori, I've got a couple of questions in terms of where will the signs be in proximity to the trail? And again, will there be, if they're close, is there a way that they're set up so there isn't traffic impediments? So kind of walk us through where they might be located, how people will see them, and then like how big they are, and some of those kind of details as we kind of try to visualize what it looks like.
So the original art will be a large canvas, and then it's scanned with a high resolution museum quality flatbed scanner. So the signs will be between 2 by 3 feet to 3 by 4.5. It's kind of going to be guided by what Christopher, the kind of space he needs. And then the sign, there'll be the art, and then there will be a, what do I want to call it? Like a border on the side that will have text. Because we're thinking about representing the different languages that would have been spoken and having those written in those languages, and then there'll also be text. So that's the size. What else did you ask me? Oh, placement. Dan, you can help me with this. The trail boardwalk may have bump outs, right? And benches, sitting areas, so go ahead.
Yeah, so ultimately, obviously at the ends of the trail are up at the top, there's space that would be accessory to it. But what we've talked about so far with Rattler, because as you recall, we have to send the final design to the DOT to be signed off on. We expect that we will have people potentially stop in the middle of that trail to kind of take in the scenery. So what we had kind of talked about is either I don't want to call it like a bump out, but it almost is a bump out, where you'd have a bench facing one direction or the other, or both, and these could probably be in a similar space, so that people, when they could stop, they could have their bike or their stroller or anything that they have it kind of off the trail. They could be off the trail, and people that are at their regular speed on a bicycle or something could be going right by them. So that is what we're talking about. Also, where the trail meets in the middle, if we end up on land in the center section, the island we're kind of talking about, there might be a possible landing area. So that'll be kind of, we worked out with the final design that the DOT would approve, and all of it would be contingent on their approval, but that's what we talked about in concept. And ultimately, it might also allow it, to say something like you're halfway and stuff like that too in that same space if we did. So.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Just a comment. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for the work you're putting into this and the just cultural awareness about the roots of Portage County, making it more diverse. It really, there's just been so much in the last few years. It doesn't make up for anything, but like knowing that like the mural and cultural commons and all of these things are just bringing all this much more to the forefront so that we're aware of it. So thank you for making that a part of this project.
Thank you for saying that. And you just made me think of some other things, like we're really close to Bannock School there, so this can become an education opportunity. And a number of different people that we have spoken with, including one of the major donors, talked with Sarah Brish, I've talked with Create, but 4 different people unprompted who know a lot about these things have said this can make this trail a destination. And then we've got the tourism, the Holiday Inn on the east side and things like that. So it feeds into other things that complement the Green Circle Trail and all the assets and amenities we have in Stevens Point. But thank you. Steve, did you have anything?
Tori or Steve?
Looking for a motion?
I would love a motion.
All right, again, thank you, Tori. Steve, I think it's a great idea. I'm fully behind it. I'll make a motion to accept the, I guess we're looking specifically for the trail sign project. So I'll make a motion to accept this as we discussed tonight.
Is there a second? All right, Chancellor Bilski, seconded. He beat you by like 2 seconds. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you both. Thank you. All right, agenda item number 6 is actually, we are going to, we got to, after this agenda was posted, we got a call from the Softball Association indicating that there is no need to pursue this. So we are going to take no action on agenda item number 6 and move into agenda item number 7, which is a forestry update. So Todd.
Todd to the main stage.
Did Todd bring a prop today?
He did.
Not only do
Show and tell.
we have a prop and handouts. This is amazing.
Yeah.
How are we going to flip through the pictures, damn it? Am I just going to, next or whatever?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Right. I thought last year I brought in a Cobus magnolia, and I thought I'd maybe try to stump Bob this time. He's been talking about this is a sweet birch. So it's a much smaller tree than we usually plant, but I wanted to bring that in. So it's one that he's been talking about quite a bit. So we're going to try to put these in Iverson Park.
Yeah, I have one substantially larger. It's a very nice tree.
So we're going to add it to the tree walk that we walked through that one time in Iverson Park. So that's on our website.
Opportunity to introduce to other urban foresters another tree they should be using.
Yep. So it'll be in there. I got 3 of them that we'll be putting over there. So anyhow, that was just a little prop I wanted to bring along. Okay. So anyhow, I guess I wanted to start rather than ending with. We're going to go over. I'm going to go over what we've been up to lately, but I want to make sure I mention we're a smaller department. Between myself and Paul Zeman, the city arborist, and Jonathan Hankins, and Ken Wanta, the park technicians, and all the other park staff. We have a good staff that we have, and that's what makes getting all this done possible. So I want to bring them up first rather than at the end. So there's lots going on with tree planting, thus the tree. We got about 270 trees that we ordered for this spring. Usually we have about 150, but we ordered quite a few more because we're going to try to hold some of those over for the fall, and I'll get into that a little bit. But we're putting, I think, about 180 in this summer, or this spring right now. We're trying a bunch of different species. This year we planted some persimmon, hop tree, striped maple, chestnut oak, and a small growing elm tree, which I can't wait to see how that really goes. It's called the Northern Empress elm, and the sweet birch. So those are just some of the new ones that we're planting. We've had a trial area that we've tried in Iverson Park where we put some different tree species where we're actually going to try to put those on the street. The one that we have on the slide right now, that's a red horse chestnut. That's Fort McNair. So we planted some of those this last fall. So I think that should get a lot of people's attention. It's a beautiful tree. This Earth Day, we added some trees to the NCCT property. We added a couple Parker pear and 2 persimmons to the orchard. So we're excited about that. All the rest of the trees look like they're doing fine. We're setting up an Arbor Day planting. I'm still trying to get a hold of Bannock School. We're hoping to do that over on the Spielman property over by the trail that we were just talking about to kind of create a border or a screen against the Spielmans. So we're going to put some spruce trees over there. So I'm still working on that. I'll keep you posted on that. We've been working in the spring. We usually have MSTC, urban forestry students, help us with some planting, and then in the fall, UWSP helps us with some planting. So MSTC is going to help plant 12 trees that that had to be removed at 1024 Franklin Street as part of the road reconstruction projects over there. So we're going to put a bunch of trees over there, so they'll just be focused over there. We had 13 memorial tree plantings. That's probably the most we've had in a long time. So for whatever reason, we had a lot of people with that. So we're excited about that. You can go to the next one, I guess. Our Zableski Brothers is going to help plant about 90 trees. That's our contractor. They're going to be planting mainly the bald and burlap stuff. That's what these are here. That bald and burlap means that there's the tree plus the dirt pile around them with the wrapped in burlap. You could go to the next one then. They're heavy. They're about 450 to 500 pounds, given on how much moisture there is, so we have to move those around with a loader. In our city park staff, we planted about 90 trees so far, and this is mainly what our guys have planted. This is the first time we're really trying this. This is all bare root stuff, so that's just how it came. This came from Buffalo, New York, and they dig the trees out of the nursery, they more or less shake the dirt off of them, and you plant a bare root. You could go to the next one then, Dan. And that's how they come. The bags, they're to kind of keep the moisture in. They're dipped in a solution that kind of keeps the roots moist. And you can go to the next one then. And this is the advantage of having a bare root tree. That's one of our park staff. Oh, yeah. He's a strong guy, but I was teasing him with that. That's a pear tree that we put over in the orchard. So they seem to be budding out and everything, so I'm excited to see how those go. And it's just they're a lot lighter. They're easier to transport. With the nursery that we got them from, there's a lot of different tree species, so we can diversify things a little bit more. But I'm going to tone that down a little bit. Maybe I went a little bit too over the line with trying some different things. So we're going to see how this stuff works. And then this is our park staff here. They're helping mulch some trees, having some fun with it. It was nice that day. So you can go to the next one. We really had to reach for this one. Go ahead, Dan. We got everybody involved. Dan was helping dig holes one day with me.
Ty, can I just have a clarification? Was that the only hole he dug that day?
There's a workman's comp claim after this.
It was the one shovel of dirt.
Said, hurry up, click the picture. I got to get out of here. So this is the gravel bed I wanted to talk about next. This is something that our forestry staff wanted to do for the last few years. So we finally went along. We finally did it this year. It was a vacant piece of land that the water department had, so there's a cyclone fence with barbed wire around it, and there's a fire hydrant there to keep it watered. It's called the Missouri gravel bed is what they call it. We take the bare root trees, and you put a layer of gravel down below it, and then you put the plants in there like in a row, and you put the gravel back over it, and you just kind of keep it moist, and you can hold the trees over for the season. So then throughout the course of the year, we can just simply, if a tree goes down, we can you can literally pop one out and put it back in. And a lot of the trees that I normally can't get in the fall, we have the access to get them now because they've been growing in there. So we're excited to try that. Let's see what else they have there. We're holding about 90 trees in there. They're a lot cheaper because you're not shipping that big root ball, that big mass. And then, like I said, that's Paul on the left, Jonathan on the right, and then Ken Want in the back. But we also, the water department and our handyman Todd Pliska helped a lot with getting the water set up so we can use that all summer. So I'm pretty excited to see how that works out. It looks good. Okay, that's just another angle to kind of give some idea. And that's just some leftover, I guess they call those Jersey bunkers from the street department. They donated those, and we just had to buy some gravel, and so we'll see how it goes. So I'm pretty excited about that. The next one then, Dan. So we got one more prop. We got our Tree City USA for this year. I gotta give that plug. I got backwards. So it's the city's, the 42nd year that we've been on Tree City USA. And what I'm more happy about, more proud, is it'll be our 18th year getting the Growth Award from the National Arbor Day Foundation. And what we got that for was, let me just see here, for updating our inventory last year. I got to read my notes here a second. Oh, I'm sorry, for our ordinance revision, our Iverson Tree Walk, and updating our inventory. I was in the wrong spot there. So what we're going to do this next year now, you can go to the next one then, Dan, is we got another grant from the DNR. We're going to be injecting our own elm trees. We're going to try to inject about 10 elm trees a year, and we're just targeting the biggest elm trees in town. And it's good for 3 years. So we're going to keep like the 30 biggest elm trees that we have along the boulevards, try to keep them healthy, because I think it's worth it. They make such a statement in our community. Then the other part of the grant that we got for this year is we're going to be replanting Smith Street and Smith and Fifth Avenue as part of the grant. And then we're also going to update our street tree management plan that the city had done. I think it was 2010 the last time. We're going to see how we progressed since that time. Okay, then you can go to the next one. We're also getting ready with our perennial and annual beds and our prairies for the summer. We're getting that going. You can go to the next one. We're also responsible for taking care of about 20 playgrounds, keeping the maintenance up on them. Like you guys were talking about at Cash Playground, it's a heavily used playground. Like, it's a lot of use. Unfortunately, there's a lot of vandalism sometime and just wear and tear. So it takes a lot of time to keep that stuff safe. And Jonathan, this week, he's studying to get certified to be a certified playground inspector. You can go to the next one then. This is just one of the spots at Cash Playground. You can see how many times it's been patched. And that's what we have to constantly go and cut those pieces out and glue it. I guess there's another big hole over there that we have to patch this week sometime. So it's due to get replaced. We're also adding wood chips to the Emerson playground. I think that's been a big success over there, right? And we're working with Iverson, the new playground in Iverson. There's some drainage issues there that we're trying to work through. We're also responsible for the guys opening up our tennis and pickleball courts. They're setting up for about 15 public school track meets. We've been working with park security. Today, Jonathan got done fertilizing all our athletic fields. And we have a contractor that I don't know if you noticed it downtown on the square and around Shopko. They put new wood chips, so Schulfers is our contractor, because there's a lot to do, so we contract that out. And then this is our seasonal staff from 2 years ago. We got everybody hired for this year. So we'll have about 7 seasonal employees. We're going to have one internship that I'm kind of excited about. We're going to hopefully work with the street department on it. We're going to review tree and sidewalk conflict issues and try to get rid of some perceptions and look at what some other municipalities do in regards to a management plan with that, and to see what we can do to maybe even further minimize those issues. So I think it'll be a good project. Rich Hauer over at the university is pretty excited about that one too. So that's the last of my slides. So if anybody has any questions, I can answer. Yep.
Todd, you mentioned that there's 13 memorial trees were planted.
They're going to be. Yeah, we haven't even started yet.
Okay. Where are those going to be planted this year?
There's one in Atwell Park. There's one that's going to be for Jean LaRose over by Gerke. Then there's about 4 or 5 in Buchholz Park. There's one in Iverson Park.
Emerson gets one too. Emerson's got one.
Emerson, there's like 3 people that are pending for Iverson, or for Emerson. We just haven't put it in simply because I don't want to put the trees in before the project's done, and then we have to, they get moved or they get destroyed. So none of those trees have been even put in yet, but I have them, they're paid for, and I have them on file, just kind of waiting for the landscape to get done. I don't want to wreck them by putting them in.
Oh, this wasn't a memory test. I didn't really.
Okay, yeah. So they're throughout the parks.
Have you had experience with the bare roots trees before?
We've done it on a minimum, we've done it like in smaller batches, but for a long, when you get the trees around in this area, a lot of times it was just like ash, maple, and honey locust, and I mean, if I want to get that, I could get that around here, but kind of struck me with this other nursery was that they had such a wide variety of plants, and you know, it's like a kid in a candy store. I'll take 2 of these, I'll take 3 of these, I'll take this. And it's like, oh my God. So we'll see what happens. But the plants that I picked, I talked to other municipalities like within the area. The community of Cambridge, down around Madison, they've studied, they've kept track for like the last 20 years on the trees that they've had, and then they go out and measure like every 3 times a year, and they measure the growth on them and how well they've done and how many they planted and how many they lost. So the plants that I chose, for the most part, they've grown down there. I know it's a little bit farther south, but if they did well down there, then you know I think it's not like I bought 100 of them. You know, I bought like 3 or 4 of them, and we're going to try them in various areas and try to site them right.
Great, thanks.
Other questions for Todd?
Yeah, and you know, often the best thing with bare root thing is to try to get it as close to the end of winter as possible, because the temperature is lower, there's less evaporation, less drying out. And
I'm guessing that these were dug, the trees that I got were probably dug then, I'm guessing too.
Yeah,
So.
but, yeah.
And plus I had a good source of information on the trees I've been trying.
Well, I always tell people, you know, I have nothing but successes to show of. Because the failures disappear.
So that's a lot of the trees I've tried lately. Is like, well, I know a guy that has one for 25 years. So.
And I even have a box in the garage labeled former botanical residence with all of the things that have died.
That's brilliant. Other questions for Todd? Dan?
I'm just going to say a couple things. I want to call attention. So Todd has gotten back-to-back years $25,000 grants. So those grants he's talking about are substantial money. That's kudos to Todd spending the time to write those grants. In addition, the gravel bed is not only unique, and you can actually walk past it if you want to. It's on the road that goes into the Girl Scout Lodge, so if you get time, go ahead and walk down. You can see it there through the fence. And again, that was a property when the well was abandoned by the water department. They were going to tear all that down, and Todd and Scott on the team both had forethought to think we could use that, so we left it up, and then they repurposed a ton of materials to not have to spend a lot of money there. So really unique. The forestry department does a lot with a little. You can see that if you look through their facilities, to the tools, to the number of people they have. So Todd's really been stretching the budget a lot, and I told him he can never leave the team ever. He does such a good job with it, but really it's the fun time of the year. I chuckle because like the forestry department comes to life when the trees come in. You know, when the truck comes down the corner, because everybody starts running to the back. But no, it's really great because the guys are doing a great job with it. And when you walk back there and see how much they got to get done in a matter of a few weeks, all of a sudden, you know, the trees are in the ground. It's a great job by them. So it's fun this is a fun time of year for forestry.
Thanks.
Kudos to you. I mean, for a guy who only planted 12 trees this year, I know. Yeah, you guys do a great job. You and your staff, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. All right, agenda item number 8. Top that, Director.
I will top it. So the best part of this is that Wayne did not see that I tucked this in the agenda, I think, till today. So first off, I owe him an apology. I spelt his name wrong. I added an extra R in there. So I texted him when the agenda came out and said, hey, I'm sorry. He didn't know what it was about. So I just didn't tell him. I said, oh, don't worry about it. You'll see when you read the agenda. But great news. We're really fortunate here. We have a number of long tenured commission members, but Wayne just celebrated his 20th year on the Park Commission. So I wanted to recognize 20 years of service and ask the Park Commission to go ahead and give him a round of applause for it.
If you're smart, you can wait almost 20 years before you have to chair this thing. So you, just as a gift for you.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Wayne. Congratulations. A couple other things. We do have a lot of projects going on. It's project season. The bandshell project update, there was a new membrane put on the roof, but we were waiting on the shoring plan, so basically how they're going to reinforce the inside of the bandshell when they cut the support beam. That plan was just stamped and approved. So you're going to see that project come to life next week. Ellis will be down there. You're going to see a bunch of, it's going to look like scaffolding in a way, but they're going to be building a structure on the inside, and it'll take a couple weeks for that to be taken apart and rebuilt back. So the good news is we have a couple events happening this weekend and tomorrow, and then we hit a little bit of a lull before we hit the concert season. So that That project, like I said, you're going to see coming to life here the next couple weeks. The Emerson Park project update, if you've driven by, it looks very different. Ginger and her team have been working right alongside us with the Friends of Emerson Park, and all of the perimeter fencing is now down, so you can actually see completely across the park. The former playground equipment has been taken out of the ground, and we fenced it in there till we determine what happens with that next. All of the fencing was repurposed. It went to the training center at the fire department. They're going to put it back in the ground, so nothing got wasted. In addition, the Earth Incorporated just had the pre-construction meeting. They will start on the 15th of May. They'll be done by the first, well, it was around the 7th, I think, of July is what it was. So you're going to see that project come together really quickly, too. So by hopefully mid-July, you'll see a new basketball court and lots of more excitement going on down there. All of the playground project is now completed. All the concrete's in, and people are playing on it. So that's another project rolling right along. The community stadium project is going to be the nightmare that begins here again. So we just did a pre-construction meeting on that. That's about a 6-month construction schedule. So you're going to see some press releases come out from my department. We're actually going to close a good portion of the Minnesota lot for the Gerke Stadium, community stadium, because they have to stage all of that construction equipment. Some of the first sequencing is all of the utilities. So we can't shut sewer down or water of any of that type of fiber, pretty much every utility, stormwater. So what will happen first is when they get there, they're going to be trenching in the new piping and underground utilities. Then there'll be a couple days of disruption where we'll be shutting it down, reconnecting. Once we've got everything routed where it needs to be, they'll start actually digging. And I don't know if I explained this, but the soil borings next to the Willet, believe it or not, were weight of hammers, what it's called. So basically when they drilled down, they got to 10 feet, and it would have been weight of hammer would have just made the ground sink out to the 10 feet. So the way that building is designed and what drove some cost is they'll be driving 100 helical piles, 20-foot depth. Basically imagine a large screw, but much larger. It's about a foot in diameter, and they just keep screwing it in like a torque wrench. And once it grabs, that's where they stop. And it's designed to be 20 feet. So those will all go in the hole first, and then they'll be able to start putting planking across and pour the concrete. So it's a long process before they can get to that point. Once that's done, then they can start building up, and it'll go much quicker. But so in 2 weeks is really when we'll start putting out announcements to the public, and likely that lot will be shut down the entire summer. We are planning around events. We shouldn't have to displace much on the field or inside the building, but they're not supposed to be done till after November. It might even be early December the way that sets up. So big project. There's a lot of coordination, lots of user groups that we're working through. But again, luckily between Ann and Scott and Todd and all of the individuals on our team that work with the different entities there, it's kind of been one of those things. I get notified of something, we send it out, and it just follows down the tree of everybody getting alerted. So we're doing the best we can not to drop the ball there. One other Green Circle trail update that I wanted to include, I don't have details today. I do think we'll have something at the next month, but ultimately there is a neighbor in the northwest corridor of the city that's interested in a property swap that potentially leads itself to some strategic acquisition for Green Circle to become a little greener, like they always try to do. So I just want to make the board aware that there will be probably something coming that it's not a large land item, but it could be a potential small property swap at next month's meeting. In addition, you might see something coming at the potentially May council that you might see another kind of acquisition strategy that's not finalized and not necessarily to the public yet, but likely will be over the next several days. So it didn't come here first because of some of the time-sensitive nature, but the item that it actually directly affects the parks will definitely come here before it goes on. So the other element would be more of an addition. This would be more of a swap. So that's as vague of an explanation I can give. If you want more details, by all means, give me a call. I can walk you through it, but that's what I can kind of share right now, and then you'll see some stuff come public through some meetings here in the future. That's what I have. There's lots more going on. Lodge rentals begin this weekend, and lawn mowing will begin here any day now with it getting warm. We've got most of our summer staff coming on board. Luckily, the crew and the staff has done a great job advertising. We're pretty well full staffed on our labor positions. We're recruiting a couple lifeguards, but we're doing pretty well there too. So yeah, it's a busy time, but it's a fun time of the year too. Get out in the parks. Lots of people are, and we always enjoy this time of year. So with that, I can answer any questions as well.
Have we considered participating in No Mow May?
In terms of the Parks Department?
Yes.
We've considered it. We have considered it. The difficult part of it is ultimately the amount of time to then put it back in schedule. So yes, I'd be happy to talk in more detail on it because it's a pretty lengthy evaluation we've done. But yeah, certainly we've considered it. I think we may be able to do it strategically in a couple places, but this year right now, we've not targeted one location or another. We have gotten a little bit of feedback the other way too of just staying in rotation so that it doesn't change the way it looks for some that don't want to see it that way too. So it's been a balancing act. We do want to try to find a way to participate, but we've not clearly identified it as the best way I can explain it. But if you give me a call, I can kind of talk more details too.
Other questions? Listen.
According to the calendar, I think, the Senior Open, the golf thing, is going to overlap with part of Riverfront Rendezvous, isn't it? Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Are we getting any special funding from Century or anything for entertaining their additional guests?
I will say that Century is a very valuable partner. They do contribute every year to Riverfront and have for many, many years. So, they've been really generous to the festival for many years. I think going back to almost the inception. I will say that we are already doing our tabletop planning with even fire and police, talking about larger crowds. What we're hearing is that we will be one of the amenities after golf tournament that'll be known to the people that are coming to it, and with it being free admittance and fair food or festival food and stuff, we expect large crowds. So it's almost difficult to plan the unknown, but what we're ultimately trying to plan for is a firework level crowd, which is always the biggest the last night, all 3 days. And we think if we can kind of be prepared for that, we should be all right. And also, I think if we get any larger than that, people will be displaced out of the park. So it almost is going to regulate itself to that maximum because there's no place for people to go. But we certainly would be busier those 3 days. As long as the weather's in good shape. So
thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Dan. All right, we are at agenda item number 9, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Certainly.
No, we'll stay.
Thank you, Liz. We have a motion and a second for adjournment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I'm not even going to ask for the nays. So thank you, everybody.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.